I'm John Strum, and this is RealTalk MS. It's November 30th, and we have a lot to talk about. And since we're officially into the holiday season, we're going to switch gears a little bit today and transition our usual left-brain content about science and medicine to some right-brain content that's all about creativity. My guest this week is Tamara Sellman. Tamara is a poet, short story writer, journalist, and essayist. So when she was diagnosed with MS in 2013, Tamara did what she does best. She began writing about it. And that writing turned into a book of poetry and prose titled Intention Tremor. I'm devoting today's episode of the podcast to my conversation with Tamara, and spoiler alert, she's even going to share some of her poetry with us. In a moment, we'll meet my guest, Tamara Sellman. Tamara Kaye Sellman has been a writer all of her life. So when she was diagnosed with MS in 2013, Tamara responded in the way that a writer responds to life events. She started writing about it. That collection of prose and poetry, chronicling Tamara's life in the 5 years following her MS diagnosis, is contained in Tamara's debut collection entitled Intention Tremor, a hybrid collection. Welcome to the podcast, Tamara, and congratulations on having your first collection of prose and poetry published.
Thank you so much, John. It's so nice to be here.
Before we get into your current work, let's spend a moment back in 2013. You were on your way to a new profession, and then things changed. What was going on in your life when you were diagnosed?
Oh, wow. Yes. I was age 47 and had this crazy idea, which I often have, about going back to school. I already had a degree in journalism, but I wanted to become a science writer. I wanted to, as my children were getting older, I wanted to expand my writing career options. And so I went back to school to study sleep technology. And that was in the fall of 2012. And that was also a time of other challenging things going on in my life because I had teenagers. I was raising teenagers and also working as a writer, doing this and that and the other. So as we often do. And so I was preparing to study for my first quarter finals at the end, or maybe it was the second quarter, end of March. And I pulled out my giant textbook, which I've been poring over, all the time for months and months. And I cracked it open and I looked at the words and I couldn't read them. I could see them. There was nothing to block my vision, but I couldn't read, which is just a weird experience when you spent your whole life as a journalist, as an editor, and as a writer, because that's the, the thing that you do is you read. And so it was very scary, very weird and surreal. And so I went and called my doctor and he managed to squeeze me in. I had a great doctor at the time. He's retired. I miss him. And at that time, I'm sort of in a semi-rural suburban kind of location. And they had a trailer that did MRIs out in the parking lot. And so after a bunch of questions and stuff, he said, why don't you just walk across the campus there and go get an MRI? So I did. And about 2 days later, the radiologist confirmed that there were white spots on my brain that were consistent with MS. And my doctor called me on the phone. I really love my doctor, but you just never want to get a phone call from your doctor because it's usually not good news. But he hooked me up with a really wonderful neurologist. I'm so blessed. I'm telling you, a really wonderful neurologist in Seattle who also does research. And within 5-6 weeks, she confirmed my diagnosis. And meanwhile, I'm still in sleep technology school. My vision cleared up, or my ability to read cleared up. I was going through a lot of stress at that time, and it turned out that and it still happens from time to time where I just can't read, and it's a weird fatigue thing that's related to MS. And it comes back, thank goodness, so I can read. Thank God. And so by the time I was diagnosed, I was doing my clinicals at the hospital, working overnight shifts, running sleep studies. And it was just this like surreal time in my life for so many reasons, but chief among them, having this new diagnosis that came really sort of out of nowhere. I had had symptoms prior, but I kind of ignored them because, we're all tired. We're all working parents. I just didn't think that they would all come together and become this. So that's what was happening at the time in my life.
So how did MS change things for you?
Oh, wow. How many different ways? It changed. Well, it explained things, and that was a good change. It explained the symptoms that I had had really all my life, different clusters of symptoms that didn't really relate to each other. When I got this MS diagnosis, we could sort of connect some dots and say, oh, that's why I have speech issues sometimes where I trip over my words or don't complete sentences at all, or the fatigue issues that have plagued me my whole life, really. Or that weird sensation, painful, that I get. It's called the MS hug. And maybe your listeners know that's the squeezing sensation that you get from a very severe muscle spasm in your midsection. It wraps around your rib cage and squeezes you. And I actually had one of those when I was 9. And it's very specific to MS. So it wouldn't be surprising that that's when it began. But I just had these little this patchwork of symptoms my whole life. So it answered a lot of questions for me, like, oh, that's why that is. And that's why that is. So that was a good thing, because then you don't feel so much like a hypochondriac. You actually see that there's something real behind what you were feeling. As far as the maybe not so great things, having to go on a really expensive medication and deal with side effects. Also, just having this new, I would say, vision of yourself or self-awareness that you didn't have before. Women who become pregnant have that same experience, I think, where you have this new knowledge about yourself, and it's like a point of no return, because you know that something is happening in your body and it can't go back without something, But basically, that was the same way with me. It's like, wow, MS, there's no cure for it. But I don't know what's going to happen to me. And so that sense of uncertainty, I think, kind of overshadowed everything. And I went through all the stages of grief that every person goes through when they have any kind of loss. I mean, for me, it was this loss of the body, my confidence in my body, because I'd always been an athlete in the past. And suddenly I was like having dizziness issues and balance issues, which, gosh, my balance beam is my favorite thing in gymnastics, right? So I know I have balance, but suddenly it's not so much a thing I can do as well anymore. Other things, other symptoms, of course, would crop up. And then the wondering, is that an MS thing, or is that just me getting older, or is that me going through menopause, or is that something entirely different? So there's all these, like, it's like a Pandora's box, really, these questions that you kind of, if you let it will plague you through every night. You'll never sleep again because you'll just be wondering. And so it took some time. I think it took me about 3 years to go through the stages of grief and get to that acceptance endpoint, where I realized, well, this is just who I am. And some days are going to be great. Most of the time, most days are good. Sometimes I have some really crappy days. So that's kind of in a nutshell. The other experiences, I think, have more to do with an external, not pressures, but there's a lot of people in the world who don't know what MS is, or who do not understand what it means to live with chronic illness. And some of them want to know and have compassion, and many don't. So you have to learn how to disclose it, and whether it's important or necessary. You have to really judge, is it really worth my time and energy to explain to this person why I can't do this particular thing? Because, for instance, I can't really do crowds anymore. I have a sensory overload situation it's just really hard to be around people. And so I kind of avoid the things I used to do. And then people will wonder, well, why? And they take it personally, like, you don't like me anymore. And like, no, I just can't handle like being in a room with 20 people, a really hot, stuffy room with like 20 people and a lot of noise and food and smells and so forth, conversation. So, I kind of had to learn what my limitations were and start honoring them and forgiving myself if I couldn't be all the things that my ambitious self wants to be. And then just really think about how to work around. I mean, MS is an obstacle, but it doesn't have to be, a big brick wall at the end of a road. So
did you start writing about different aspects of a life living with MS right away, or did you give it some time before you started writing?
Well, I did a couple of things. I'm always writing. So, and sometimes you just write to just purge what's on your brain because you just got to get things out in your head. I was actually writing more journals or diaries of symptoms and feelings. And I did that for about 1.5 years because I just wanted to do some more of the connecting of the dots. And the only way to do it is to really, for me anyway, is to put it down on paper and just start to examine it, look at, be more scholastic, I guess, or academic about it. And just, look at what is happening and possibly why, or, whatever. And so I kept for about 1.5 years, a journal that really just tracked all my symptoms. And then I always, at the end of each journal entry, I would say, what happened in my day. And I would start to notice, patterns, which is the whole point of it, right? Is to see what you can't see just in a second. It's really to see patterns and trends and things like that. So I was doing more of that, but I would still write things when I was angry or upset or frustrated or not feeling great, just for my own, just more therapeutically for myself. But by the fall of that same year, I was attending these long weekends. They were writing intensives up in Port Townsend at the Centrum facility at Fort Worden State Park. And I was going to these long weekends and writing for whatever, because I find that I do better if I escape my home and go to a writing space, or often my travel trailer or an Airbnb sometimes if it's too snowy to take the trailer somewhere. And I just go and just do nothing but write. I have maybe a silent retreat where I don't talk to anybody or see anybody. And all I do is read and write and cook, basically. And so that fall I went and I took my travel trailer up to Fort Worden State Park and I attended it was called the YAWP, YAWP. And I would go up there. I went up there and contributed or participated in that event and started writing poems around the campfire. And one of the first poems in the book is set there at that. And I dedicate it to my peers in that group who were very supportive of writing about this journey that I was embarking on, whether I wanted to or not. And so, that's kind of how it sort of gravitated in that way. And then I put a form or a structure on the actual effort by turning it into a kind of abecedarian, which is a format in which every piece in a collection of work starts with a different letter of the alphabet. And that gave me some structure for my own thoughts. And I started that. I banded it at some point because I wanted to move things around a little bit, but it got me to the end. That's the main thing. And I finished it up at Port Townsend. The last piece I wrote was up at Port Townsend in February or January of 2019, I think.
I'm curious about the title of your collection. How did you arrive at Intention Tremor?
Well, I really like using phrases that have maybe suggest multiple ideas or meanings. I felt like I was writing intentionally, but I do have a tremor sometimes, especially when I'm really tired or if I have to stand in front of people. My left leg will do its little shimmy and then I have to really consciously make it stop, which I can, but it's really distracting if you're speaking or in front of people, hosting an event or something, your leg starts to go wackadoodle, and so I have tremors, but also the idea of a tremor is also like to shake things up or fragmentation or fracturing of a reality, maybe. So I kind of like the multiple meanings inside the phrase intention tremor. Now, there is such a thing as an intention tremor. And it's the kind of tremor usually in your hands. Your hand will be still and fine, and then you'll reach for something out of an intention, like to pick up a cup of coffee, and then your hand will start shaking, and then you have trouble holding or grasping that cup of coffee. And I definitely have dropped quite a few cups of coffee when I was having that intention tremor right before I was diagnosed. And that was so annoying because I drink a lot of coffee. So it definitely, it's a distinct symptom of MS, but it's also got these other layers that I thought fit in well with my story.
Well, I have more questions, but before I get to them, I'm wondering if you'd mind sharing a selection from the book with us.
Sure. Excuse me. Let me see here. Yes. Okay. So I think I'm going to first start out with this kind of fun piece that I wrote. One of the things that most people with MS will talk about as a problem for them, and usually it's with other people involved, is this sense that they complain about symptoms, but nobody seems to want to believe them, or they treat them like they're hypochondriacs. Okay. So I wrote this poem. It's a formal poem known as a blitz. The blitz is a kind of poetry form where you'll hear it when I read it to you. I won't explain it to you because it's very obvious when you hear it spoken out loud. But so the title of this poem is Diary of a Syndrome, a Hypochondriac's Blitz. Hiding the truth, hiding a diary in permanent ink, diary of symptoms, symptoms of the brain, symptoms of the body, body of knowledge, body of evidence, evidence of foul play, evidence-based, based on opinion, based on facts. Facts don't lie. Facts on file. File this. File a claim. Claim ignorance. Claim a dependent upon circumstances, dependent upon your survival, survival of the fittest, survival story, story structure, story of my life, life force, life with chronic illness, illness and injury, illness and wellness, wellness center, wellness plan, plan for the worst, plan for the unexpected, unexpected company, unexpected pain, pain in the ass, pain management, management of symptoms, management experience, experience setbacks, experience of a lifetime, lifetime warranty, lifetime commitment, commitment heavy, commitment fatigue, fatigue at work, fatigue syndrome, syndrome actor, syndrome or disorder, disorder, actor. So you can hear there's these different phrases that all sort of have this fun link that makes them really, interlinking phrases that have this dynamic that is really interesting to me.
That was really wonderful.
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked it.
I really, really did. I often talk about the importance of participating in MS research. When you got to evidence in your poem, I heard evidence-based. It's a phrase I tend to use as often as possible. I just look at research as the engine that drives the future. So I was very happy to learn that, like me, you're a member of the I Conquer MS People-Powered Research Network.
Yes.
What was it that made you want to get involved with I Conquer MS?
Well, they're awesome. First of all,
yes.
I, as a healthcare professional myself, but also being a patient, I can see very much the mismatch between the intentions of the medical community, the healthcare field, and patients. And I absolutely think that everything needs to be patient-centered and focused, because patients are just not listened to. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but I feel like I'm an outlier because I have a neurologist who really does listen to me. And I just feel like, wow, am I the only one? Because everyone else talks about how they are dismissed and told, well, you have mental illness instead of, other legitimate concerns that have a biology and a physiology to them that are not depression or anxiety, but could be very directly linked to multiple sclerosis or other neurological conditions. And then just the fact that the medical community has really failed a lot of communities, if they're not white and male, in particular, because the research itself does not seem to be focused on people who are not white or male. And that's a real problem because there are biological differences in different groups of people. There are also social determinants of health between groups of people. And so the research comes out with answers that only serve one part of the community, but not all of them. And so we need to spend more time there. And I Conquer MS and the Accelerated Cure Project both are making this a priority. I, on a more personal level, chose them because they had were the subject and support for a series of anthologies of writings from people with MS called Something on Our Minds. And that's when I first discovered them. And I thought, oh, that is so cool. That's where I learned about this more patient-focused organization, nonprofit. And I do feel like there's a lot of good groups out there, but I don't think that they're all really keeping the patient voice at front and center or top of mind, as they say. And that's why I really chose this organization. I really think what they're doing is awesome because they're taking, now that we have these tools for mining data and putting together huge databases of information, we really can accelerate some aspects of the research protocols that usually take so much time. And, we're in the middle of a pandemic and people are still getting diagnosed with MS because it doesn't care. And yet we don't have the same resources and personnel and laboratories because most of those, for good reason, are being dedicated to coronavirus research and vaccines and treatments and all of that. Thank goodness we need that. But, that means there's very little money, time, space left over for everything else. And so any kind of organization that can help researchers to speed up what they're doing in any way is just like A-okay in my book.
Mine too. And I should,
yeah.
I should also mention that you haven't only gotten involved. You have really, I would say, profoundly gotten yourself involved. I want to mention that you've also donated 100% of the proceeds that you received from the sale of your book to the Accelerated Cure Project for MS. And for my listeners, the Accelerated Cure Project for MS is what I'll call the parent organization, if you prefer, the mothership of I Conquer MS. So when we're talking about one, we're always talking about the other. What motivated you to go ahead and put your money where your real concerns were?
Poetry in general does not usually make a lot of money. And so I wasn't writing this book really to line my own nest, with money. I mean, it was really about reaching out to people. And so I felt like, what, I really need to, this is a great way to support a network. I don't really do the MS walk a lot. I feel like it's not special, for me anyway. I've done it in the past, but I felt like this was a unique way for me to show my support and to put my money where my mouth was. You know what I'm saying? And it was $1,000. I wish I could sell more books and I'm still working at it. I'm still selling. I just got some new press locally for, which was fantastic. I'm still going to be out there peddling my book, trying to get people to buy it, and telling them it's not because I want the money, because none of the money is going to me. It's going to go to this organization. It just made sense. I mean, if they're going to have, so it might be, fun money for me, but you know what? They need it more than I do. I'm in a position where I can do that. So, and maybe a lot of other people with MS aren't. So why not? It makes sense. It just made sense to me.
Well, let me help you peddle a few books if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
Where can our listeners find your book and purchase it?
Oh, sure. So I have a dedicated link. It's intentiontremorbook.com, all one word. And you can find everything there. You can find the sales page. I just updated my review page, so you can read all the interviews and reviews that are in print. You can listen to all kinds of podcasts. And eventually when I get the link for this one, it'll be there too. You can, I've had other like readings and literary events online. Everything has been online. I've not been able to get a single live reading anywhere because of the pandemic, which is really hard because a first book in particular sells the best in a live experience, because people will listen, they'll see you, they'll go, oh, I want to help this person. And it's so much different when you have the barrier of a virtual experience. A lot of people just aren't going to go. Or by the time I was ready to do these readings, people were burnt out on Zoom. They're just like, I just can't look at another screen. And I don't blame them because I can't stand it either. So you can go to intentiontremorbook.com and you can find all the things. I have just a handful of copies left that I can sign here. If you decide to buy through someone besides me and you want it to be signed, you can just let me know that you bought a copy and I'll send you a book plate that has my signature on it. And then you can stick it in there. That way, you can still get a signed copy. So, and I hope people do. I mean, if you know someone with MS who might benefit, or anyone with chronic illness, because this isn't just about MS, it's about living with pain. It's about explaining to your loved ones and friends what this is like. It's about dealing with people on the internet who give you bad information or, want to sell you things. It's also about hope. It's about saying, I have a tribe out here, and there's so many wonderful people in our MS tribe. I'm sure you can attest to that. And, so it's about that too. It's not really a story about me and, oh, woe is me. This is what happened to me. Nor is it a story about, I'm a superhero because I fight. I'm an MS warrior. I actually hate the term MS warrior because I'm just an ordinary person. And the last thing I want to do is start a fight with anybody. I just want to get through this. So I feel like the poems and the short prose pieces in there are more grounded and more situated in a real context that people can understand on the day to day. And that was the goal. And right now the feedback is that I achieved that. So if you're looking for something like that, definitely have a look and buy a copy if you're interested.
Well, we'll certainly include that link in today's show notes as well to make it easy for people. Perfect. Your book is a collection of individual prose and poetry pieces. I'm wondering whether you see the book sort of taken as a whole as offering a message to its reader.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's a couple of things. It's really a medical memoir, but it just happens to be told in prose and poetry because I do have a through line. I start with early symptoms, the diagnosis, and then I kind of get into all the fallout following diagnosis, which is probably the best way to describe it, just like nuclear fallout from that. And then the phoenix rising from the ashes at the end, kind of, if you want to go with that. I guess that's a bit of a cliche, but so there's that. But the ongoing message really is that you can have a life. And I have to say, I was really super blessed to have two people in my life who had multiple sclerosis before I was diagnosed. And they were working moms. One of them managed a major city bookstore, and the other one was she was a critical care nurse, and prior to that was a life flight nurse. These are hard jobs, and they were doing it. So when I was diagnosed, I realized, I didn't even have to realize, it was already obvious to me that it wasn't a death sentence, or that it didn't mean I was going to just go straight to a wheelchair and then just disappear off the face of the earth, that I could still have a life. I might just have to go about it a little bit differently. And so my book is about that too. It's about saying, yeah, sometimes I have these weird days. I walk sideways. I can't see straight. You just get through it. And, everyone's got something. And this just happens to be my thing. And I just want people to read it and say, oh, okay, it's not this scary. It's scary, but it's not this death sentence that a lot of people might presume it to be. So that definitely, there's hope. So
Tamara Kaye Sellman, thank you for sharing your MS journey in such eloquent terms. The name of the
thank
book
you.
is Intention Tremor, a hybrid collection, and the link is intentiontremorbook.com. Would you mind wrapping up our conversation by sharing one more piece from your book?
Yes. Oh gosh, there's so many. Let's see. All I want to do it maybe. Well, I do want to read this one just because it's so relevant to our times right now. I wrote this poem in 2016. This is well before the pandemic. Okay. And this poem is entitled Quarantine. And that's because people with compromised immune systems on the regular have to quarantine or isolate themselves during certain seasons of the year because the flu bug comes through. And for someone with a compromised immune system, like with MS, that could put you in the hospital. So I wrote this because I was really getting sick and tired of seeing so many sick people at the grocery store and feeling like, do I have to mask up? And this is in 2016. So let me just read it for you. And it'll be relevant to everybody now because now everybody understands what it feels like. So quarantine begins between Halloween and Veterans Day after my flu inoculation. Safeway grocery shopping happens after 8 p.m. or not at all. Bottle of hand sanitizer in my pocket for times when the store supply disappears. Wearing a face mask doesn't really protect me from the hacking up of lungs and other fine particles that people seem happy to share with neighbors. I reserve these for plane trips made necessary by work interests, hoping to send a message of awareness. I have been lucky so far. Head colds that last 14 days. The feels like norovirus, GI tract disruptions, more likely related to meds, but no real influenza. Immunocompromised, I belong to that exclusive club filled with babies and old people, defending against that much larger club who fears the modern miracles of vaccines, eschewing science, praising herd immunity. I'm no germaphobe. This is no hypochondriac's fable. I've been told don't risk it by more than one physician. My DMTs, or medications, render blood test results that mirror the compromise of AIDS. So I choose quarantine to survive 6 months of other people's freedom of choice. Yes, they're out there and they're deadly. People with MS die from smaller things, after all, like hospitalization for UTIs that the healthy cavalierly fend off with glasses of cranberry juice. The days dawn dark until March, prompting morning rituals with happy light and coffee cup. I can't take vacations from Facebook lest I lose touch with people who care. Ponder the simple gift of having a husband who looks forward to daily grocery trips. Thank you so much for letting me read from my book, John. It was fun.
This really was. And I think that might be the award winner for the most prescient poetry ever written. Unbelievable.
Who knew? And who knew that we would all have these words in our vocabulary now? You know, I mean, I was wearing face masks on airplanes during the flu season because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to get sick and die. You know, it's crazy. So who knew?
Thank you for writing that then. Thank you for reading it now. And thanks for talking with me today.
Oh, it was so much fun, John. Thanks so much. Have a good weekend.
You too. That's going to wrap up this episode of Real Talk MS. Real Talk MS is powered by the National MS Society. And you can share this episode of the podcast by letting your friends or family members know that all they have to do is point their web browser at realtalkms.com/222. You'll find that link in today's show notes so you can easily copy and paste it right into an email or text. And now I have a favor to ask. It would mean a lot to me if you would leave a rating and review for Real Talk MS. Just point your web browser at realtalkms.com/review, and you'll see links to the different online destinations that you can choose from to leave that rating and review. And those links will be different for each of you because they're based upon the software that you happen to be using to listen to podcasts, or at least the software that you have installed on your phone, tablet, or desktop computer. For instance, if you happen to be using an Android phone to listen to RealTalk MS, you won't see a link to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, because you can't leave a review on Apple Podcasts with an Android phone. I hope that makes sense. It's just a little bit of technology that makes leaving a rating and review super easy. So I hope you'll take a moment to visit realtalkms.com/review and leave a rating and review for the podcast. You'll find a link to do that in today's show notes. I'm John Strum. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and make healthy choices.